Okay, so we're going to kick off. It's great because I'm sure everyone left, hardcore gamers, incredibly interested in the game market. This seems to be my slot every year. I seem to do the game slot every year, which I quite enjoy. And so what we're going to talk about today is, look, games make an enormous amount of money. They dominate the App Store, and that's, there's a great thing where games are very interesting because they make either a lot of money or they lose a lot of money. They don't tend to do this. So what we've got a great panel here today. We've got representatives from a game, Facebook, and analytics. So all three of which do that, and I invest in games, but I'm going to be turning over the panel to each one of you. So, Shaul, do you want to introduce yourself, kick off with?
Sure. Hi, I'm Shaul Olmert, co-founder and CEO of Playbuzz, an Israeli-based company, launched about a year ago, and is developed a platform that enables every content owner, every publisher, every brand to very easily create game experiences for their websites and applications.
Bob?
Hi everyone, Bob Slynn. So I head up the platform partnerships team at Facebook. We basically focus on working with games developers across EMEA and really trying to help them build great games across platform.
Morten?
Yeah, I'm Morten. I'm the founder of Game Analytics. Founded the company 3 years ago. Spent a year and a half building the service. The game industry is kind of a pretty data-intensive vertical, so we had to spend quite a lot of time building up the first version. It's a free service. We have about 14,000 games signed up for Game Analytics now, and things are good. It's all about like helping indie developers get the most out of their games, connecting with the right audience, working on increasing the engagement and monetization metrics in their games. It's a competitive space, and these indie developers need all the help they can get.
Cool. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to start off with this man here. So this man here, it is our slot for both of us. We did this slot last year as well, and Danny makes you stick to what he knows. And last year, Playbuzz was just in the very early days, wasn't it? Sure. It was really early, and it was very interesting around content, gamification of content. Which you guys were, one of the early pioneers in, without a doubt. So, do you guys now, a year ahead, it's doing really well. So, you want to I'd be really interested to let the audience know how you went from last year to this year, how you've grown it.
Sure. So, I decided to start my own company because in Israel, I see that's what everybody does. All of my friends have their own startups. And the idea was, to start a company, to develop a product for a year or two, then to see it fails because the product doesn't work or nobody really needs it. And then to shut down the company, be depressed for a little bit, play on the PlayStation a little bit, and then come up with a different idea and start a new company. So that's what I wanted to create. And at first, everything went according to the plan. I was able to charm some investors with my PowerPoint skills, so they gave me some money.
And those white socks.
Exactly. That's who could resist that? And then we started a company. The product, nobody liked it. Nobody wanted to partner with us. We had no users. Nobody wanted to invest in us. And I could already see, my PlayStation face coming through. And then things started going wrong. We launched the product, and sure enough, very soon after, a lot of different publishers from all over the world, like NBC, MTV, AOL, Fox in the States, Telegraph and Mirror in the UK, and Bild and Burda in Germany. All of them started using our product, and as a result, our own website at playbuzz.com became a real viral behemoth. We are now one of the most shared sites on social media, specifically on Facebook, and have last month reached no less than 82 million unique users worldwide.
Which is great. So let's move from there to Facebook, because, a large part of your growth was Facebook.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you guys support something like this, which is a content gamified platform? It's very interesting.
No, it's definitely an interesting question. It's less what I probably spend more time working with developers focused on how they can use all the different parts of the platform. But clearly, the message is the same. I think if the Facebook newsfeed and Facebook in general is a great way for developers to reach users and particularly reach them in a relevant way in which they're really engaged. There's a whole bunch of different tools we have at developers' disposal. So it can be anything from straight sharing to requests to invites. There's a whole bunch of different ways that developers can really bring new users into their game and then also drive engagement.
And I don't think, I'm not sure that, do developers understand everything that Facebook offers at most times? Because I'm not sure they do.
Well, certainly that's what my team's trying to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's true, we have a broad range of products, and we do spend a lot of time with different developers and really just doing outreach across the region to try to make sure that developers understand what we have. And that's part of the reason I'm here today, is really just because we have the sort of traditional Facebook.com desktop presence, where people are building apps within the experience. We have experiences like Charles where people are sharing through a web experience, and then we have what we're doing more and more of is working with mobile developers, and we have a whole bunch of features from back-end services and hosting to sharing to things like even like the Audience Network, which is a way for people to bring Facebook advertising into their apps and make money.
So, perfect, thanks Bob. So, Morten, next one. So, the classic path of a game right now is to go up like this, you get featured in the store, you get loads of downloads, you really hope that investors are not that savvy and sort of like, buy into you while you're at the top before you fall. There is this, it is very hard now to stay at like this and to keep going. And how do analytics and how does game analytics sort of help you stay there after that first getting featured?
Well, first of all, sustainability in the games industry is all about content, right? It's all about the quality of content. But of course, in order for you to measure the quality of this content, you need tools, you need data in order to gain a deep understanding about this. And what we see again and again and again and again is that even bigger studios, but especially the core audience of game analytics, which is like the indie developers, they spend a lot of time actually developing the first game, and then in the end they get a little impatient. They launch the games without like having like a really rigorous iterative testing phase, soft launching the game, and be totally patient about hitting the right metrics. Because if you don't have the right metrics, you might get lucky, you might get featured, but you will definitely go down very, very quickly. So yeah, getting the right core metrics in place in the first place, and then something that a lot of game developers is also forgetting about is developing enough content. Because if they get featured, if they get to be like fairly successful, then what we see again and again is also cool indie studios running dry in terms of content. So that's also an important thing to understand, which is also something that you can easily see in the data if the content is running dry pretty fast.
So I'm just going to come back to you actually. So we're going to be doing this slot for sure, I'm sure, next year, right? Sure. So in a year's time, like, where do you want to be, and how are these guys going to help you get there?
So I think that, first of all, analytics is really the key to everything we're doing, because we operate in a very chaotic environment. There are so many variables that you have to control. Whenever my traffic goes up or down, I have so many different data sources to look into and try to analyze what's working or not working, and how do I control the user flow. I have to look at my campaigns and my organic activity on social media. And then, click-through rates on my website and how users behave on my website, and then, where do users come from and how much they spend, and it's a lot of different pieces to put together. So, incorporating a system like game analytics is really the key in order to make some sense of this chaos and try to pave your way to understand what are the key metrics that you really need to control in order to drive your business. Now, Facebook plays a big role not only in our business, but pretty much in any publishing business or anyone that's doing anything online these days, because social media and Facebook in particular became the platform with which people discover content. Today, more people discover content, more people visit websites through stuff that is shared on Facebook than in any other way. It used to be all about searches on Google. Now Google is still, the platform of choice for finding a lot of different types of information. But when it comes to content, even news, the majority, let alone other stories or entertainment content, it's really what gets shared on Facebook that is being driven. So it really becomes Facebook is becoming the gateway from which people learn about new stuff, new services. And with that, I want to play moderator for a second and put up a question directly to Bob. It seems that Facebook sometimes, it kind of started from a platform that encapsulated everything within. People played games on Facebook. People, consumed services on Facebook. Then it became more of an agnostic platform that kind of let out these tools and let everyone work on whichever platform they want. And now we see with video, for instance, now videos are playing directly within the newsfeed, so it's kind of coming back. What is your view or Facebook's view, as much as you can elaborate on that, about how do you work with the rest of the world, as a facilitator or as an aggregator?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think there's very much two parts of the business. So the part of the business I live in is the platform part, which is very much our whole mission is just to build great tools for developers, right? So we have a whole range of things. We focus more and more on the mobile side, but we also have the desktop side. That continues to be hugely relevant, and it's stuff you may never see. I mean, we have a hosting service that you can use called Parse. You would never know that an app was using Parse necessarily. So there's all that sort of stuff which we continue to focus on, and we're investing a lot of effort in. But to your point, there's also more and more people are producing content to be discovered in the newsfeed just because of the sheer size of the audience. And particularly on mobile, where there's people, the newsfeed is Facebook in a sense, if you're in the mobile app experience. So I'd say it's a bit of both. We are definitely working to make sure that there's the best content possible, and we help developers and media producers to get the content into the feed and make sure people can discover it. But then I'd say at the same time, there's a whole separate part of the business, which is about building tools.
You still moderator, or was that it? Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Oh, no, don't do that, mate. So moving on, so Morten, just so from an outlet, so how are the bigger, like it seems to be that the spend to get a game off the ground is getting bigger and bigger. It feels like it sometimes. I mean, is that true, or like, what do you think is the optimal way to launch a game right now?
Well, it depends, of course. There's been like a huge democratization when it comes to producing a game in the first place, right? There's like the big engines out there, like Unity is like the perfect example of democratization when it comes to producing games. So in that sense, it's becoming cheaper and cheaper to produce it. There's been a democratization when it comes to accessibility to the market, with Apple opening up and Google and so on. But of course, when it comes to the user acquisition, really to get in front of the right audience, it's really, really competitive, right? We have King, for instance, spending, I think they're spending like 400 million or something like that in user acquisition budgets on a yearly basis. So, how do you, as a small indie developer, compete with that? The message is that, basically you can't really compete when it comes to the spend. What you need to do is try to compete on innovation instead. Try to think about where did all the big studios come from originally. They came from innovation. They came from being like outliers at first. They were like small indie studios. Many of those hugely successful game studios today. So it's all about like trusting in your instinct, trusting in your creative instinct, and then create amazing content, and then see where that takes you. But keep investing in analyzing the data as well to see if the game actually also engages with an audience, and then be patient. Keep on iterating until you have it in a good state, and then you might be in a position to actually spend money in order for you to get in front of an audience. But I think innovation for a small developer is kind of what you need to focus on. Be radical and trust your instinct.
Yeah, I definitely. I think be radical is definitely the right thing. So, Bob, coming back to you. So, I think when I invest in games, I mean, they are mostly in Asia, but I mean, I do feel that developers probably don't see Facebook enough as a launch partner. I mean, they see Facebook as let's make sure we have login with Facebook, and we've got to do some shares, and we've got to let's see how we can use the newsfeed, etc. But I don't think they go deeper that. So how when it comes to launch, how do you guys help developers from a launch perspective?
Good question. I think there's sort of two main ways we approach. We have a bunch of partners who we've worked with a long time who were originally on desktop and who've kind of transitioned to mobile. King's a great example, Nordius, Wuga. So for those developers, and frankly for any developer who's looking at, again, starting with the game and iterating on a game, we definitely think that the presence on desktop and on Facebook is still a relevant place to be. It's still a good place to be, particularly because it's easier to iterate, It's easier to find users. It's easier to track and effectively optimize your game. On the other hand, we do work with a lot of developers who are only building for mobile. And as I said, there's a whole bunch of services we use with them. I think the points Morton's making are critical, though. The key thing is you need to think about building a game. You need to instrument your game. You need to test in a certain number of markets, understand the audience, understand the viral loop, make sure you've got that, the audience that's going to actually retain and then ultimately spend in your game. And then as you start to think about scaling, then there's a whole bunch of stuff where we can really help. Everything from login to sharing to requests. Those are great, again, in a hyper-competitive market where it's very, very difficult to buy customers. Any way you can get customers to engage with a game that doesn't cost you anything is hugely valuable. So we definitely see our role as being complementary to that, and it also just makes the game richer. And then ultimately, when you start to scale, looking at Facebook advertising is really the only way you can actually find and target demographically. So that's sort of the second or third phase, I would say, when you really start to build for growth.
It's interesting.
That resonates well from a publisher or developer standpoint. You really got to develop from within the ecosystem that you live in. And Facebook is a big part of the ecosystem, just like the Google Play or the Apple App Store. You have to design your product from an architectural standpoint as well as from a product and business model standpoint to comply with those ecosystems. So when people figured out that people like to try apps for free, but then they're willing to pay for in-app purchases. They, redesign the business model, redesign the user experience to comply with that. Same goes for Facebook. Once you realize that people have an urge to share and show off and compare themselves to others, and that people find it sometimes easier to access a personalized experience if they log in with their social media credentials, then you find yourself develop your product according to what these ecosystems, such as Facebook, offer you as a developer or publisher of content.
So just going for that, so content and the gamification of content is a big topic. So how do you think a content owner or someone who is in that space can gamify their content effectively? What are the core things to do?
Sure, I think the best way to think about it is that consumption habits have changed, predominantly by the fact that we consume information today, and information includes news, articles, as well as games, mostly on very small devices, on 4 to 5 inches screen, mostly while we're on the go, while we have limited bandwidth and limited attention. We parallel task, we focus on other stuff, we don't really have undivided attention. So the whole ecosystem in which people consume information has changed, and you got to create information that is suitable for these consumption patterns. And that calls for different types of experiences that are less, about real-time connectivity and more about, sort of turn-based or ongoing. You can always tap in and out. The experiences need to be very short because you never know when this, machine might ring or, alert or something may happen that disrupts the, undivided attention you used to have. So, it's really about creating content that's adjustable to these consumption patterns. Now, it starts with the actual devices and the technologies, but it doesn't stop there. It's also about the fact that people have become, very ADD. They mostly do 10 things at once. And, again, if you create, there's still a room for experiences like Minecraft, in which you are on a full screen or whatever, League of Legends or whichever games are popular right now, in which you have a full screen experience and you do have undivided attention and kids spend hours and hours focused only on that. But the majority of the of the dollars as well as of the minutes played and the usage and everything else is going more and more towards these new platforms that address the kind of conditions in which people consume information these days.
It's got to be snackable, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be snackable because you never know when people
and it's got to be social.
Get interrupted.
It's like people have got, back to my previous point about people discover information about social media, on social media. It's not only that, it's also the experience is in a way not whole unless you then export it back to social media. The real circle of experience closes when someone finds something on social media, goes through an experience and then shares the result back with the community. And this is kind of the circle in which things operate. So I think today's content, to your question, has to be snackable, has to be very accessible, very short, adjustable to mobile screen and to parallel tasking, but also has to be social, in essence. It has to be something that can be triggered by social experience and will create the merit, will create the need of the user to then share it back with their social graph.
So
it's basically the same with games, right?
Yep.
You know, it's that's also what you see. So okay, some of the eyes crossing games are maybe mid-core games, or some of them at least. But a lot of the most popular games out there, free games, are definitely low barrier of entry, snaggable games. And we see that again and again. So it's the same trend with games, casual games, definitely, as it is with traditional content.
Minecraft. So let's talk Minecraft for a second. So the interesting, so I have a little 8-year-old. An 8-year-old, wakes up in the morning and he's only allowed one show, and the only thing he ever wants to watch is Stampy Longhead. And I don't know if you guys have if you've got kids, but if you've got kids and who play Minecraft, Stampy Longhead, yeah, Stampy Longhead, right? So Stampy Longhead kills me. Right, this guy is a genius, and so he has a YouTube channel. He uploads a video once a day, 4 million views every day of that video. And every time I ever run into a dad whose kids play Minecraft, they all know Stampy Longhead. Now, so I mean, it's very interesting how YouTube is now like such a driver of games because of the walkthroughs and because of the elements there. So how do you guys interact with YouTube from your respective businesses? I mean, if we start off with yourself there, and the guys who are on YouTube and who are pushing the games and the walkthroughs there.
Well, so YouTube is kind of it's not new, but in terms of relating to our business, it's kind of new. So we're advising game studios on how to connect with the audience, and like buying users traditionally on Facebook or other places is becoming increasingly difficult. So obviously we are looking into alternatives. Even traditional TV actually is for some studios very, very cost effective. But also YouTube, it's again about like shareability. It's where a lot of the audience is discovering new content. So definitely focusing on having a YouTube strategy is key and part of the marketing mix. But exactly how to go about it is kind of new territory to us. But we have done experiments with traditional TV, old school TV, which is like amazing in terms of generating installs for mobile, if you think about that whole second screen approach and stuff. So yeah.
And how about, I mean, from a video perspective, I mean, YouTube obviously, how do you get those, it does feel like the game vloggers, etc., are just on YouTube. I mean, how does Facebook interact with this from a video walkthrough perspective and all this type of stuff, where, it is tending to go there quite a lot now?
Yeah, I mean, I think more broadly, the reality is video content is a key part of consumption patterns, and I don't think users, players necessarily differentiate a whole lot between images, video, text. It's all about discovering interesting content and learning about whatever it is they love, be it Minecraft, be it Candy Crush Soda, who knows, right? So I think the bigger message is video is an integral part of any communication approach. And I think it depends on the genre, it depends on the game in terms of where that content's going to live. I think the point Michelle was making earlier, the content might be created in some guy's bedroom in Stockholm, but it'll end up getting distributed on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, you name it, it'll end up there. So I think it's all about making sure, again, that you're producing that content that's relevant and then figuring out ways that users can share it, ideally on Facebook, but across other platforms. And I think, if you're in a world where, your job is to create great game experiences, this is a key part of what you need to do.
So I think we'll go to some questions. If you guys are interested in asking the panel from a cross-section of games. Anyone interested? Wow, okay. That's it, nice and quiet, okay. All right, well, we'll go back to the panel then. So you guys did have an opportunity. All right, so we'll go back to the panel. So from a perspective, just to finish up with then. So, going back to content and gamification. So, what do you guys recommend when a company comes to you and says, "Look, we want to gamify, or you want to try and figure out how to where do they approach? Like, where do they start? Do they go hire a game company? Do they?
I think the first thing is to again going back to the ecosystem. You guys mentioned YouTube. YouTube is successful because it's very open. Everyone can use it. Everyone can create content. Then everyone can embed it, distribute it. It's all free and available. I think that's really the key. Work within the ecosystem. Whichever content that you want to create, figure out how it ties in to the way people consume information, to the way the platform distribute information or enable distribution and sharing information. And then if you play along those lines, then you really have a chance to ride on the tide and create scale. I think that when YouTube came, YouTube came out, I was working for MTV Networks, and the first thing we did when we saw YouTube was press legal charges against them, which ended up failing because we were afraid that YouTube is the new MTV. So YouTube is not the MTV; it's just the new TV. It's the new everything, it's the new television, and then everyone can create great content for television and distribute it through YouTube. And I think the reason that they took the market by storm is because of the open nature of everything they do, similar to Facebook, different platforms, but also an open platform in which everyone can create and embed and distribute content according to some rules with some commercial considerations. And when you learn how to master this system, not by reverse engineering their algorithms, but by the same way that Maker Studio did for YouTube and that successful publishers on Facebook do for Facebook, once you realize how people use this ecosystem and how to leverage that to your advantage, you're really able to ride on its scale and take it to your advantage.
Cool. We're just going to finish off then. Last bit. So where do you guys see the interesting areas for gaming in the next year or so? I mean, Morten, where do you see to start off with? I mean, what sectors or what areas do you think are the most interesting for you when you're seeing people come to you?
So what we are focusing on constantly is trying to help the indie developers, and that's also where I think the most interesting stuff is always coming from. So we have Rovio, we have Supercell, we have all the big guys, King, and so. Do we really think that the next interesting thing is coming out of these companies, or do we think that that the new interesting content and the new game mechanics and so on is getting invented from from these thousands and thousands of small innovation labs that are spawning up everywhere? So we have like 1 million developers on the Unity platform now. So that's kind of what we're trying to focus on, helping indie developers, get the most out of it, and that's also where we think, the future is. It's with these guys. The next Mojang and the next Supercell is definitely coming from the long tail of the content producers out there.
Yeah, I think touching on the Unity question, I think cross-platform is the other big thing that we see a lot of is really. You're all game players. You play games on every single platform, everywhere you can possibly go, from phone to tablet to ultimately TV and PC. So, I mean, I think that's the key thing is just thinking about it as a developer and making sure you're anticipating that and the different types of gameplay that you need to have a great game experience on those platforms. That's what we do a lot of, is trying to help developers with that. I think the other thing that within the EMEA region that we're seeing a lot of differences in the regional markets. I mean, Israel is a huge market for us, really, really big developers, lots of smaller developers. So again, and there's really, really strong social casino expertise there. We see Russia, which is becoming a big market for desktop gaming. So again, I think it's also just looking at where you can find innovation or reinventing different genres. Again, that's part of, I think, what we'll continue to see.
Cool. Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up. I'm very pleased that we had such a deep and comprehensive panel that we have answered every question in your head on gaming, clearly. So thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for coming in and having a good chat. Appreciate it, and see you next year. Okay, very good.
Thanks a lot.